Well, I've been involved it's a little embarrassing at this point, but we're approaching 20 years. So between internal audits and loss prevention as a function, we're almost at 20 years now.
About 9 years, actually more than 9 years, both in retail and in restaurant loss prevention. Managed a restaurant for a number of years. Been with Envysion 4.5 years now. So what we do is we take all of that data and we're really looking for those outliers. And what we do is we know how people are going to steal across different brands and concepts. We know how people are going to steal in wireless versus pay a counter versus fast casual. And what we do is then we build out those reports to find what we know is going to be successful. And then we really just start digging into it. Once we find one incident, if it's cash theft, we're going to send it to the client because every person understands that no matter where they are in the LP spectrum. If it's underringing, if it's refunds, we like to send in 2 or 3 incidents to show that it's not just, hey, one time. We're starting to show, hey, there's actually a pattern of behavior at this store by this employee.
Yeah, no, that's a common misconception. What we do is we take all the data from the POSs and combine it. Then using our reporting tools, we're able to identify outliers, whether it's by location or by employee. And then those outliers tell us where to focus our time, energy, and effort. Yeah, I think one of the difficult risks for a franchisee or owner to identify are gaps or weaknesses in their cash handling policies and procedures. If you have these gaps, what can happen is you can make it, if not easy, at least easier for your employees to take advantage of you. When you're able to put adequate, sufficient, strong controls in place to mitigate those risks, you can do a couple of things. One, in some cases, completely eliminate their ability to do an appropriate activity that way. And at the very least, you can make it so that when they are misbehaving, as it were, you're making it easier for you to identify.
Yeah, so I think one common misconception is among LP professionals that we're going to take their jobs eventually, and we're not there to take their jobs at all. As loss prevention has evolved more and more, loss prevention isn't just focused on theft, it's a lot of other things. So we're there to be an additional resource and really to help with their time management. Like I said earlier, we send a couple of those incidents to the client and they can decide to build a case from it, or they can actually then send it to the proper person or department to handle. So that is a great question. Unfortunately, it's rarely ever the first time that person's ever stolen, and it's never the last time they've stolen either. And unfortunately, the longer they've been there, the greater that loss is that was caused to the client. And then there's also this little bit of a cascade effect. If someone sees someone else stealing and they see that there's no consequences to it, that person now becomes apathetic, or they might themselves actually start stealing too.
Okay, well, it actually has a number of impacts, but one of them is turnover, right? Good, hardworking, honest people don't want to work with thieves. So you're looking at losing some of your better people just because they don't want to stay in that environment. Another thing is that your employees, they're not naive. They know what's going on. So if their manager's stealing or their shift manager's stealing or a co-employee stealing, eventually their attitude can change, right? And they can jump in and say, like, if it's okay for my manager to steal, why isn't it okay for me to steal? The third thing that I would say that kind of jumps up is the morale aspect, right? So you can have a good, hardworking employee, again, not naive. They see what's going on. What's the incentive for them to go the extra mile? What's the incentive to go above and beyond to take care of your customers, right? And so in the end, what you're doing is you're also reducing your guest experience and your customer experience, and you're really risking turning over some of your better clients. one of the things is that if you can't, especially in today's environment, terminate somebody, it doesn't mean that you can't reassign their role. If someone is stealing, let's say from the POS, then remove them from the entire cash handling process. They don't need to be running a cash register. They don't need to be putting together your daily deposit. They don't need to be counting out your tills at the end of a shift, right? You can find other things that they can do. And this allows you to keep them, right, for the time being, without having to jeopardize your staffing, but also reducing the risk that you're putting on your financial assets. The other thing that happens when just knowing that someone is doing something like this, but you can't take maybe the action that you'd like, is something that you can remember. Is this somebody that you would really want to promote in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, when they've shown a past history of being willing to take advantage of the situation and steal directly from the company?
So it really depends. With our clients that are really proactive about addressing and stopping theft and loss, it's going to become more and more difficult. With clients that aren't as proactive about it, or they have this kind of revolving door of theft is going to remain on the trajectory it's on. It might actually even increase. What I like to tell people is when we do our job right, it actually makes our job harder. So that's the end goal, is actually making it more difficult. Policies and procedures are being followed. People know that there's someone now watching the transactions. There's less likelihood of actually stealing because they do know that there are consequences to it.
What I would say is that loss prevention audits aren't just about catching the bad guys, right? Loss prevention audits are about separating the bad actors from the good actors so that you can save your good actors and you don't lose them to other locations. The worst thing is to lose a good employee because their conscience just doesn't allow them to work around inappropriate behavior any longer.